What's good, Chuckle Nuts? We're back with a different type of video. Today I'm just gonna have some gameplay playing, and we're actually gonna be talking about the Bible. It's actually the greatest book ever written. It's actually a multiple part book, and it was written by Kentaro Miura, rest in peace. It also goes by other names, depending on where you're from, what cultures you are, whatnot, also known as berserk. So you may have heard it under that name. But I figured I recently read Berserk. Finished it up last year. Took me a couple months, but I was binging that shit. Ain't no lie. Kind of wants me to get me a hardback copy of them, those like big black deluxe ones, because them bitches look hard as hell. But regardless, I wanted to talk about the beginning of Berserk because I want to rewatch it or reread it rather. And I figured this would be a good spot for me to try some new content, try some new shit. So, intro's already a minute long. Let's get into it. So we open up Berserk, and right off the bat, anybody that started it don't even need to get into it. Anybody that's even read the first chapter has a pretty good idea of the type of shit that would go down, because it has a very good introduction where in the first actual panel you see our main man guts deep in a hole, and I'm talking deep as hell, like god damn, boy, double cheeked up and everything. And so he's clapping this hoe, and it keeps going, and then you realize, like, wait, her teeth start looking weird, and then she starts, like, transforming into this monster. And then she's like, oh, I got you. She's, like, becomes this huge monster thing. And you originally, you might think, oh, shit, what the fuck is this? What type of, Lovecraft, I want to say. So you have this, like, Lovecraftian type monster, and the artwork is already, like, it's really dark. Like, Berserk is a really dark, black, heavy manga, and but the artwork itself is like amazing. Like especially once you start getting deeper into it, you see the author like come into it and get like his real like big like art upgrade, I guess, whatever you want to call it, and it just gets better. But anyways, she's like, yeah, I'm gonna eat you and shit, and this nigga puts his hand in her mouth. He has like this mech arm, like this prosthetic, but it's metal. He puts it in her mouth. He blows his bitch's top back. I'm talking boom! Like, damn! So that bitch is on fire and everything, and she's just dead. So, that's the intro to the series. Now, with that being said, this is definitely one of my favorite series out of anything, mangas, anime, movies, TV shows, whatever. It's amazing. Characters are amazing, the story's amazing, everything. Beautiful. Mwah. But, after this, you see this kind of castle-like town, like, kingdom, rather, and you start seeing a bunch of the people in it. You see Guts walking around, and Guts is a big nigga. Like he has his stature is giant, but you see him walking around with this big black like cloak on. So you're like, huh? And you see like a blade like poking out of it, like down by his feet. You're like, what the fuck is that? And while he's walking through, he sees a cart with a bunch of younger girls in it. And you don't, it's not like really emphasized, but it's just one small panel as he's walking through the town. And then we cut over to a scene in a bar where there's these dudes that are throwing a knife at a fairy that's hung up, trying to basically play bullseye with it and kill it. And then Guts enters the bar, and he tells the shop owner, I'm gonna mess up your shop a bit. And he pulls out a crossbow, and he lets that thing go. Boom! Hits the nigga right in his shit, bro. Like, right through the melon. One side, out the other, bro. Crazy. Pins this nigga's head to this shit. So all his homeboys are like, what? Nani? And they pull out the swords and whatnot, because we're in, like, medieval times, it was like. But they get black with the crossbow, too. And from this scene, you can tell that Guts, he's really that nigga. You get a good close-up of his face and everything, his whole character design. He's got a metal arm. He looks like he's lost in his right eye, I believe. And he's just a gigantic dude, muscular and all that shit. So he ends up basically torturing this one dude and like, hey nigga, send a message to your boss for me. Tell him the black swordsman is coming. And then he absolutely yams this dude in half, though, sneaking up on him. And I mean, like, golly. And this is where you get introduced to this big-ass giant sword. I'm talking this sword is the size of this nigga. Like, it's taller than me. I'm talking like a 6-7 foot sword at least. And that's crazy to be wielding. But he chops this nigga in half. goes on about his business. He rescues a little elf dude, and he's trying to like give him his things to help him out. But every time this elf is trying to talk to Guts, Guts is really just like not even answering him, and then he like smacks him. He basically tells him, "Don't touch me, or I'll squash you like a bug," which is odd, but okay, he might just be a dickhead, whatever. And he ends up getting surrounded by guards, and he gets captured, and he ends up getting like whipped and tortured. And that is pretty much how chapter 1 ends, with him being tortured, spitting in the torturer's face. While he's being tortured, the what it looks to be like the Pope or like the religious figure comes in and oversees like the torturing or whatever, and you get this panel of him thinking about the, I guess like Lord, or not the Lord, but man, just this figure that's like a really great warrior. And you get this panel, he's in like a bunch of armor, he's super decked out, his horse got the armor on him too, and he's got like this mask, or like helmet rather, and it looks like a snake or whatever. And he says that thing is beyond human. It's something horrible. It's incomprehensible. A creature from the very depths of the pit. No one could kill him. Nobody human. And as he's saying this, Guts says, "I see, so that's why you made your deal with him." And the Pope gets mad. Or not the Pope, but the religious dude gets mad. And he's basically like, "You don't understand anything. You're just running your mouth. You don't understand anything." You get this panel of Guts, like, surrounded in darkness with most of his face, with a cut from one of the whips that he had been whipped with earlier. He says, "I know all about it. He's a monster and he eats human flesh. I know it very well, and I know that you continue to provide him with his meals. Pass him through the gate of the city." And that was the wagon full of, like, smaller children and whatnot. So they have been sending him meals of people. And basically, Gus just continues to talk down to him, talk shit, get hit, get, like, burned with, like, basically branded while he's talking his shit. And that's when we cut over to the man that they were just talking about in his, like, mansion-looking thing. And he's eating something. And so his men come in and tell him that the religious dude is here and he has a message or whatever about the incident at the bar. And he explains everything to him. And while he's eating, the entire time you don't see the dude's face. You only see, like, it's completely blackened from his head, like, down to his chin, and you see his, like, glowing eyes. And that's one thing that I really love about Berserk, is just the artwork and the way that Miura portrays, like, the almost not human, like, unknown of this character. And he flings his food at the religious dude, and he catches it, and he looks, and he realizes it's a human ear. And the man returns to the armor that is sat in the room, and basically says he doesn't need any excuses, none at all, he'll deal with it. And with that, he takes away the religious dude, or his men does, and you get this panel of the blacked out face with humongous eyes looking over the entire kingdom. And it gives you this sense of what the fuck, like. So he's sitting in his cell, well, not sitting, he's laying down, basically unable to move from the torture he's been through. And he looks up, and on some of the hay sitting in the cell with him, he sees this, like, really small, like, monster. And it's all deformed, and it doesn't look like it could hurt anything. It's just this weird, grotesque, gross monster. And you get a panel of Gus saying "you" again, as if he recognizes it, and the thing starts crawling towards him. And Gus increasingly, like, gets, like, sweaty and nervous, and you could tell that he shook. And he's just, like, yelling, "Get away from me, get away from me, get away from me." And then that's when the elf shows back up with some keys, and he lands in some liquid, and he says, "Hey, this water's kind of yellow." So yeah, he landed in piss. Just thought I would point that out. But long story short, the elf introduces himself because we never really got his name. His name ends up being Puck. Good to remember because he does kind of stick around for a decent amount of the story. But he has the keys to release Guts, and they have this conversation about how Guts is covered in wounds and whatnot, and Guts just ignores it. He doesn't even pay it any mind. He just asks him, "What are you doing here?" And he tells him he's there to repay his debts. And as he says that, he touches Guts to, I guess, try to heal him or see how bad it is. And as he touches it, Guts snaps at him and says, "Don't touch me. Don't you ever touch me," with emphasis. Bold text. For a reason. That nigga's mad. You can see it in his face. And he doesn't try to accept Puck's help, but Puck kind of helps him anyways with like his elf magic. And it seems that he somewhat like helped his wounds, though not healing them. Mainly just like putting him at ease. And Puck sees this mark on his neck where he asks Guts about it, and Guts like leans up really fast, and he just says brand. It's the brand. Nobody knows what happened. He doesn't explain how it happened to him, what it means, or anything like that. But long story short, they end up talking for a bit, and Guts talks about how he's gonna find that bastard and kill him. Talking about the Lord and the Warrior that both seem to be not so human. And he doesn't care about anything else. He doesn't care about the people in the kingdom. Anyone who dies because they get caught up in someone else's fight is a small fry who doesn't have the strength to survive in this first place. And then, as he's saying this very condescending thing about, not really condescending, but what's the word for it? It's not empathetic at all, and it's a very dim outlook on things. And he's starting to say, like, if people can't survive, and, you know, it doesn't matter. And as he's saying all this, Puck, I guess, can feel Guts' emotion inside of him. And he's talking about his emotions are pouring in, and it's so, like, complex. Is it rage? No. It's rage, sadness, fear, mixed together with darkness and things deeper than that. And he doesn't really understand the feeling. Victory. And he says, and then Puck asks him, well, if that's the case, then why did you save me? And Gus just laughs. Idiot, who do you think you are? You think I saved you? No. You were just in the way. And as he says this, Puck realizes, like, yeah, he didn't save him. He just killed the dudes that were trying to kill him at the bar. He had no intention of saving him. And so, Puck gets upset, he starts crying, and he leaves. And it closes on Guts in the cell, and his brand starts to bleed. There's a brand on his neck, and it's bleeding. And we cut back to Puck flying over the castle, and there's bodies thrown everywhere. Everything's on fire. There's people's like heads getting stomped in by horses, and there's a raid. There's a bunch of people in armor, and you see the man in the snake armor lifting up a child from his pole axe and drinking the blood from him, as the child has none of his lower body. He's drinking the blood from him, which is crazy, dog. And Puck says that it's not human. That's not a person. And through all of this chaos, the horses and the knights are charging through, and they're charging through a street where you can see a bunch of bodies scattered into a pile or whatever. And then you see somebody rise, and it's Guts. He was literally hiding under the bodies of other niggas like it's nothing, bro. And he pops up, silhouetted face in darkness, and starts blasting niggas with that crossbow. Boom! Choo, 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 choo. Through the throat, through the eye hole, through the mouth, whoever the army is not. Choo, 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 choo. He's really that nigga, bro. But after this, people try to charge him on horses. He takes out his big ass swords, cuts the nigga in half and his horse. Both. With one swing of his sword. The feat of strength right there is insane to me. But as you'll come to find out, it's normal for Guts. Now this video's gone on for way too long, so I'm gonna kind of start speeding it up here, kind of wrap up the end fast, because this is just the first chapter. And I do want to make some separate videos on other chapters, or maybe start fitting a couple chapters into each one. But anyways, the snake man starts rushing towards Guts, and Guts pumps him full of arrows from his crossbow. And at first he keeps charging on horseback, but then the man in armor falls over. And he goes into a house, or gets blasted into a house, basically, by Guts. And Guts goes in, and he's looking down, and he's looking for him, and then all of a sudden, Boom! This gigantic tail hits the fuck out of Gus. And I mean hard. I mean rocking this nigga, sending him sky high. Nigga look like a bird. Knocked the fucking crossbow off his arm and everything. And as he's midair, before he even lands, you see him coughing up blood. And whenever he lands, he like lands on his neck, and you can tell that he's fucked up. And you see from the house that he got hit from the glowing eyes of the man. But then below it, you start to see his face revealed in the next panel, and you realize that it's his human face inside of what looked like that snake helmet, but it's actually like a fucking face. Like he's turned into a snake monster. And he looks, I don't know, what's a good way to describe this nigga? He looks like if you took the old reptile design from Mortal Kombat and threw a cobra head on top. That's basically the best way I can describe how he looks. And he has this really nasty face with a fucking tongue poking out with a vagina mouth. What it looks like is crazy, bro. But it starts trying to get to Guts, and Guts is coughing up blood still, and he gets hit again by the tail, and he gets hit into some bricks, and he's just getting thrashed around. Boom again, boom again, pow pow. He's just getting beat the fuck up. And there's this panel of him literally sticking out his tongue with blood coming out his mouth, face down, covered in his own fucking blood, and you think that he's dead. So the Snake Man lifts him up close to his face, and he's talking shit, talking about how he's gonna be food and he's gonna eat him. And right at that moment, Guts puts his hand in his mouth, and he blows that nigga's shit back, because that mechanical arm he had is actually a cannon that he could fire once. So he basically just has a fucking cannon on his arm. So he blows the dude's face off, and he kind of gets away. But he cuts him in half afterwards, because he's still, you know, on fire and losing half of his face, so he's in agony. And so Guts uses this moment to cut him in half, and he has this grin on his face. Guts does, like a crazy ass grin whenever you thought this nigga was about to die, pretty much. And he walks over to him, and he starts shooting a fucking like monster in the face with his crossbow shit, and says, "Don't die on me yet. Didn't you say it doesn't matter how many bolts I shoot at you? It must be rough being unkillable and all." But no matter, like you said, humans are weak. We die easily. But no matter how weak we are, even if we're being shot to bits or stabbed to death, we still want to live. And as he's doing this, he's just unloading bolts on this dude's face, and he's screaming in agony, like, "Stop, stop, stop!" And Gus just has this crazy smile on his face. And then he asks the question, the God Hand. Where are the 5 members of the God Hand? Now, the snake demon is shook. I don't know. I don't know where they are. It's not for apostles such as us to know. I'm telling the truth. I don't know. And Gus just walks away. Take your time and savor it. Your body is slowly being burned to ashes. And he leaves, as the snake demon is burned to death, as he wails in agony. And you get a shot of Puck crying and, you know, folding in on himself from the emotions flooding into him from Guts. And that is the end of Berserk Chapter 1. So, this video was way too fucking long, like way too long, so I apologize. But I wanted to give my thoughts on Berserk because I haven't really done a video like this, and I very much recommend it. So, yeah, stay hard.
Round 4.